Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video. What is something you deeply regret doing as a child that still affects you to this day?
Experience 1. Being so mean to my younger sister in our childhood. I often wonder how much I contributed to her current mental health struggles. It eats me alive some days. Experience 2. In middle school, I jumped from the top of a slide and landed flat on the bottom, hurting my back. Pretty sure I've never recovered. Experience 3. When I was 13 or 14, I saw one of my lifelong friends walking down the street, blank stare with her makeup running. I was on my bicycle racing to get home before my 8 p.m. curfew, so I didn't stop to talk to her. She committed self-deletion that night, and I was the last person to see her alive. I went through intense therapy after that, as I was filled with guilt and grief. I still have issues with that guilt today, some 21 years later. Experience 4. After every Thanksgiving dinner as a child, my grandpa would put a plate of food together for a man named Mr. Bailey who lived by himself and didn't have family in town. He'd drive over to his house, drop the food off, talk for 5 to 10 minutes, and then come back. I didn't know this. One year after our meal, my grandpa handed me a plate with a slice of pumpkin pie on it and told me to get in the back seat of his truck. I didn't ask questions and hopped in with the pie. We get to our destination and my grandpa opens my door and says,
"You have the pie."
What do you mean, Grandpa? I ate it.
I thought the pie was for me. I ate it in the back seat on the car ride like it was a brownie. Mr. Bailey didn't get any pumpkin pie that year. I still can't look at pumpkin pie without feeling bad about it. Experience 5. I took everything to heart. All the insults, all the failures, all the minor mishaps, I couldn't just let it pass me by. It hit me right in the heart, which is why my current mental health leaves a lot to be desired. Experience 6. When I was 4, a neighbor girl and I became friends. I invited her over one day to play. We were playing with dog food. It was fake food. Well, she started eating it. I screamed at her and called her nasty and was just crappy. Told her I didn't want to play with her anymore. As it turned out, the poor girl was severely neglected. Her parents never had food, so she was basically starving. It didn't dawn on me until I saw that they were kicked from their home, and it was condemned and torn down a year later. I remember I went over to play one time and the house smelled like rotting hamburger meat. There were cockroaches everywhere. It was traumatizing. I cannot imagine living there. I have tried to find the girl via social media with no luck. Experience 7. I had a rugby mate. He always got a sandwich from my dad every Thursday, and I got nothing, and I used to think my dad was a prick until it dawned on me. The kid was poor, and my dad was being kind, and to realize one of your buddies is struggling, man, I felt so bad. I told my mom, and she told me to bring him home to dinner. From then on, he would visit me often when I was sick or when I had lost someone. When my parents split, he was there to help me cope. True, we weren't the best of friends, and we haven't talked in years, saving a few crossings of our paths in the neighborhood. He passed away last month of leukemia. It hurt me a lot to hear that. He was such a good man who deserved so much from life. Edit. Thanks everybody for the kind comments. Let me tell you a little about this dude. He had the greenest thumb ever. He brought back to life so many plants, and he loved selling them, nurturing them, tending to them. Truth be told, I thought this guy would outlive me. I kind of feel bad not seeing him again. I got to turn 29 this year. He didn't. This sucks, but at least he's away from all the suffering, and I really hope there's a heaven so I can meet him again, and I hope when I do, he's fat as a cow for all of those meals he couldn't get. You deserve it, Nacho. Experience 8. Not food related, but sexual abuse and child neglect. My dad had friends who had a 6-year-old daughter. I was around 8 when I met her, so we played together a lot. But she always wanted to play house and would make me be the wife while she was the husband, and would always try to make advances on me, touch me inappropriately, try to kiss me, etc. I knew it was wrong and would always refuse and shut it down when it got to that, and would try to play something else, but she would say that's how families work and would cry if I didn't. I always just let her cry about it because I did not want to be in that situation. It was wrong. And I was older, so it looks bad on me especially. I was scared of telling my parents though, because again, I was older, so I knew better, even though I wouldn't let it happen. But she told her aunt one day that I wouldn't let her do those things to me, and she told my dad, who in turn pretty much said,
Absolutely the hell not, I'm not letting my daughter be in that situation. They're not playing together anymore.
So, I never played with her again. This sucked to me because she was a great kid and we didn't really have kids around my age in my family that I could play with, but I was also okay with it because she wouldn't play any other game I suggested that didn't involve sexual things. I wasn't told why she got taken from her parents a few months later. CPS got involved with her family and deemed her unsafe with them, that's all I was told. I found out years later, well into my teens, that her aunt reported the girl's mom and dad for letting their dad, the kid's grandfather, sexually abuse her. Like, her parents knew it was happening and willingly let it happen. When the girl's aunt found out about the game she tried playing with me, her aunt questioned her gently to tell her where she learned that behavior. Her aunt told my dad to warn me and to not let me go to the girl's house alone, if at all. He never did anyways. It was always at the aunt's house, and her and my dad worked together to report the situation. He made sure I wasn't involved because he didn't want to give me any trauma from it. But he did let me know that even though I was older, he wouldn't have immediately put all the blame on me and that I could talk to him about anything. To make it worse, they also had a 2-year-old daughter that he would do this. I threw up when I found out the truth. I never heard from them again, and I always wonder if she's healing. She'd be 21 now. I will never know. I could never find them. ETA. I just wanted to make an edit to thank everyone for the kind responses and for sharing your stories. I don't talk about this with people because I feel sort of guilty in some way. Either for not doing something sooner or for letting her do it the first time until I realized what she was doing, that is, or for being older and not saying anything to an adult. I don't know. But to those who read this and have been through the same, I am so sorry. And to those who were that girl in my story, I am so sorry. If anyone needs someone to talk to, please feel free to reach out to me. It's hard to go through things alone, and I know sometimes all a person needs is someone who will listen. I wish everyone the best. Help is out there. And just know that this stranger loves you.
Do you like listening to these stories? Do you want to hear more of them? Then click that like button, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And check the description for links to more videos and interesting stories.
Experience 9. When I was 7 years old. I lived in a rural part of a developing suburb in the 80s. About 15 to 20 houses surrounded by farmland on 2 streets that ran parallel. Not many kids in these houses my age except a few. One house in particular had 2 sisters, one aged 7 and the other aged 9. The older one befriended me, and it started out innocent enough, like playing and exploring in the neighborhood with her little sister tagging along. Then it got to always asking if she and her sister could stay over for dinner, which my mom had no issue with feeding them. Then to wanted to stay the night and do sleepovers, which my mom and dad didn't have a problem with, but only once a week, despite the sisters asking pretty much every day. Those sleepovers turned into an exploration fest for those 2 girls. They always wanted to kiss me and touch my dick and my butt. The first few times were just kissing, which I didn't necessarily object to, and we're talking both of them at the same time. Then it turned into show us your dick, and then a few times led to them forcibly removing my pajama pants while I was asleep. At first, I didn't have a problem dropping my pants just for them to look, but when they both either wanted to touch or put their mouth on it is when I felt really weird about it, but I wanted them to be my friends. So, I reluctantly let them. I always got them to stop by saying I had to pee. Might I mention, up to this point, I had never seen or met their parents. Eventually, the younger one confided in me, telling me that they didn't want to go home because their dad was mean and hurt them while they were sleeping, and her mom didn't do anything about it. I ended up telling my mother about what was happening during the sleepovers and what the little sister had told me. Mom freaked out and said I was to never see them again and that she would have a talk with their parents. I ended up having to avoid them and duck out any time I saw them coming while I was outside in the neighborhood. And this was every day I had to do this, figuring out new ways to avoid them without being rude about it. Then one day the girls didn't appear where they normally were around their house, and I noticed the door of their house wide open and a bunch of stuff piled up on the curb. I rode by on my bike and could see the house was empty, walked up to the door, went inside. No one was there. Have no idea what happened to these two girls. I always wondered why they didn't go to the same school as all the other kids. The older sister always said they went to another school in another town. But they were always at home. Even when I was homesick from school, they were out and about in the neighborhood. Clearly, they were being abused in more ways than one. I rarely think about them, but when I do, I get the visceral gut feeling of revisited trauma, for lack of a better word. I'm sure they went through much more trauma than they put me through. Experience 10. Not sleeping in my dying father's bed with him. He asked me to because he didn't want to be alone. I was 18 at the time and wasn't prepared for all this. Until the day he died, I will never forgive myself. Experience 11. When I was 12, my mom got drunk one night and told me to drink with her. She was pretty aggressive about it, and I was too intimidated to say no since I had a habit of agreeing to almost anything. I started drinking, and she'd regularly supply me with alcohol so she could have a drinking partner. I struggled with alcoholism for over 15 years. I've been sobered for over 4 now, but all of my teen years and most of my 20s were absolutely lost. Wish I had been braver and not taken that first drink. Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting so many replies. Just want to say thank you to everyone who shared their own experience and offered their sympathies. I'm sorry some of you also had a similar experience. Addiction can feel impossible to escape. To anyone who's overcome their own struggles with alcoholism, I'm so proud of you, and I hope you are too. Experience 12. When I was 5, I and a friend found a frog down by the river. Being kids, we had no common sense yet. We kept throwing it in the air and watched it bounce off the ground, thinking it must be having fun. It died, of course. At 60, I still can't look at a frog without feeling guilty. Experience 13. I regret not having thicker skin and sticking up for myself from my bullies. There were 2 individuals who were complete psychos and went out of their way to make several people's lives hell. One girl was so crazy she tried running my friend off the road driving home from school. She is now in prison for embezzling from her employer. Experience 14. Giving up my dog. When I was 11, my parents got me a lab puppy which I adored. I raised her for 2 years. She grew up to be an amazing dog but had high energy, and my dad never watched her. Even if we needed him to, he refused and started acting like a little brat. So, when I needed to go to the hospital for a broken leg, my one request was just to watch her. This once. He said yes. Then when I came back a couple days later, she developed a UTI and almost starved because he didn't feed her, give her water, or let her out once. Not once. Taking care of the UTI was so hard to handle, so my mom gave me a choice. Let her suffer because he wasn't going to buy the proper medication. Or give her up. So, I gave her up. Then I became a problem because I hated my dad for not getting medication for my dog, whose condition could kill her, but buying painkillers for his crappy dog who had an abscess on his foot. When I was 16, I went back to the shelter in hopes of finding her there, healthier than the day I gave her up. She died at the shelter because nobody adopted her or helped her. The infection spread to her kidneys, causing them to shut down. I freaking cried. I hated my dad as much as humanly possible, and I miss her so much. Edit. Thank you all for the kind words and support. I'm not able to respond to all, so I'm sorry, but this is more emotional support than I could have asked for. Hugs for all of you. Experience 15. When I was 4 years old, the husband of my aunt died. Very soon after his death, the whole family was gathered around in the living room, me sitting across from her. I wanted to make her feel better and said,
Don't worry, you will find a new Maddie you will love.
The hurt and surprised face of her haunts me even today. I understood I did something wrong, but not really what at that moment. We are on good terms, and she is living a good life now. She very likely forgot what I told her that day. I'm probably the only one remembering that conversation. Experience 16. One time when I was 6 to 7, I rode on a four-wheeler with my older sister. We hit a dip in my grandparents' pasture. My sister fell off and she went under the rear tire. She needed immediate surgery. My grandmother still blames me for it, and it has affected me deeply. For years, I listened to how my sister almost died due to my negligence. Experience 17. Stop exercising / any kind of working out because I was told my movement was awkward. Tried to shrink myself because I was a tall girl who stood out from other kids, which ruined my posture. Now I have very bad scoliosis that causes mild but chronic back pain. It's very visible as my waist is not symmetrical. Might have to go under a big surgery, putting braces on my spine, in the next 3 to 4 years. Edit, thank you. I didn't know scoliosis was purely caused by genetics. Experience 18. In I believe 2nd grade, a friend of mine and I were really mean to another kid with some type of mental challenge. It wasn't something we did more than this one instance, so I don't know if I'd call it consistent bullying, but he and I said some nasty things to him on the last day of school. I should have known better and regret it to this day. I have seen his profile pop up on social media, and I do occasionally get the desire to reach out and apologize, but I'm not sure it would be worth it so far in the future. Nonetheless, I really wish I could talk some sense into myself back then. The boy didn't deserve that. Nobody would have. Experience 19. In my senior year of high school, there was a classmate who sat by himself at lunch every single day. I often thought about going to sit with him and never did. My heart still hurts from never doing it, and that was 20 years ago. I can't find him on social media or anything. I truly hope he is out there living his absolute best life. Experience 20. My sister and I grew up with our maternal grandparents. Since my mom had to go to work, our grandparents took care of us. They were living with us then. One night when I was 10 years old, my grandmother was complaining about how my sister and I left the dishes on the sink. We used to bring lunchboxes to school. She was saying that she was not going to prepare our lunchbox the following day if we didn't do the dishes, our lunchboxes included. Since, to me, our grandmother has always told us the same thing but prepared our lunchboxes for school anyway the following morning, I, nor my sister, did not bother washing the dishes. We all slept that night with the dishes in the sink. The following morning, I was awakened by the sunlight from the window. I was surprised that my grandmother has not awakened yet, since she's the one who usually wakes up first and prepares everything for us before we go to school. A few minutes later, after we tried waking her up, I realized she died from her sleep. When I was 12 years old, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors told us they could no longer do anything about it, so my mom and her siblings decided to take him home, the house we're living in. A few weeks later, one of my distant cousins gave us a visit. I can't remember what we were doing exactly, but there was a moment when she called my attention saying that it looked like my grandfather was making deep breaths. My grandfather's bedroom door was always open so anyone who would pass by the living room could see him and check on him. I told her that it's normal and he's really breathing that way because sometimes he's having a hard time breathing. A few minutes later, my grandfather left us. I should have washed the dishes. My grandmother could have slept with a peaceful heart before she passed away, knowing her granddaughters did her last request. I should have checked on my grandfather when he was having trouble breathing. My grandfather could have had someone beside him in his last moments. In both moments, I thought that they're always like that, they'll be fine. Next thing I know, they're gone.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.